Good morning and welcome to Balance of Power. I'm Brandon Rittiman. We're taking today's show on the road. We're in Washington, D.C., where we got to sit down with both of Colorado's U.S. senators. Senators, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be with you.
We're coming up on President Trump's 100 days in office. I'm curious for just your basic letter grade. How is he doing and why? I'll start with you.
Look, I don't put letter grades on any president.
Come on.
I think it's a trap
We're off to a
question.
horrible start.
It's a trap question, but I think what I think if you look at the pace of regulatory oversight, we've repealed about $85 billion worth of regulations over the last 3 months. American families no longer have to comply with over 54 million hours of paperwork. We have a Supreme Court justice from Colorado on the nation's highest court. So this has been productive, but certainly more work to do.
You can give a letter grade if you want.
No, I'm not going to give a letter grade. I think he's off to a very slow start, and a lot of the promises that he's made to the American people that I didn't think he was going to be able to keep, he hasn't kept in the first 100 days. And my hope is that going forward, he'll be able to put a legislative team together and begin to start working in a thoughtful way with the Congress.
So this week, the Senate was invited over to the White House for a briefing on North Korea. Do you feel like we're spooling up to military conflict with them?
I don't think we are. In fact, I think it's clear yesterday that they're preparing for every contingency, but their first contingency is not military by any means. It's preparing to make sure that we're protecting our ally South Korea, our ally Japan, and the homeland of the United States. But they're also making sure that we lead with diplomacy, and I think that was the message that Secretary Tillerson and Secretary Mattis actually delivered, is that we have to exhaust our diplomatic options, and we are by no means anywhere close to exhausting our diplomatic options.
They had nukes before this administration. They've been testing them. I mean, what's different?
Well, this is an urgent question for our national defense, the defense of our allies, South Korea and Japan, as Corey said. I have very high confidence in the national security team that the president has assembled. It's also very important for North Korea to understand that if necessary, we're going to use force to end this threat against us and our allies.
Let's talk about another big bipartisan one, healthcare. That's been a little rough. This new repeal and replace bill, I mean, the Freedom Caucus is out there saying it's not really a repeal. If you end up passing something that just kind of ends up being an Obamacare fix, but isn't a repeal and replace, aren't you letting Republican voters down? And on the flip side of that, if they try to label it a repeal and replace, is it something any Democrat's going to support?
Well, I think what we have right now is a bill that's moving in the House that we haven't seen the legislative language for. But what I'm looking for in a health care bill is something that's actually going to work to reduce costs, to give access to people across Colorado in this country that they otherwise don't have. I hope that we'll have bipartisan support to do that.
I think the House bill goes directly in the opposite direction that anybody in Colorado wants, Republicans, independents, and Democrats included. And the idea that they'd be passing a bill that would strip more than 20 million people of their health insurance does not strike me as the direction that this country wants to head. I believe if that bill gets through the House, it will be dead on arrival in the Senate.
We talked a little bit about Neil Gorsuch, and I'm curious to know, I mean, do you feel like anyone out there really cared that the Senate went nuclear?
I don't feel that a lot of people cared that the Senate went nuclear. They should have cared that the Senate went nuclear. And I think over time, people are going to realize what we've done to this institution, because instead of having judicial nominees that come to the Senate and say, look, I have an open mind, I have a moderate approach to the law, what we're going to have is people saying, I'm the most liberal judge in America, you should put me on the Supreme Court when a Democrat is there. Or he's the most conservative judge in America, President, you should put him on the court. There's going to be enormous pressure from the base of both parties because neither party needs to cooperate with the other. I strongly believe that the Democrats' strategy to filibuster that nominee was the wrong thing to do, and I think that the Republicans using the nuclear option was the wrong thing to do as well.
As the Republican sitting next to him, do you defend going nuclear? Do you feel like that was a wise step, or did you do that and kind of regret it?
Filibusters on judicial nominations hadn't been around until about 2001 or 2003. when now Minority Leader Chuck Schumer decided that they would start filibustering judicial nominations. And so it escalated over the years. In 2013, Harry Reid invoked the nuclear option on nominations and judges other than the Supreme Court justice. And so filibusters were something that had never been utilized in a Supreme Court justice before. In 1968, there was a bipartisan effort to stop Abe Fortas from becoming Chief Justice. He was already on the Supreme Court. And so I think this is restoring the ordinary norms of the Senate, the fact that you do not filibuster a judge.
There was bad behavior on both sides all the way along here, and there's no question about it. I think the question is how are Republicans and Democrats going to come together to try to straighten this place out rather than accept the political weather that we all have inherited to one degree or another. And that's a question I have every single day I come to work, and it's one of the reasons why we've tried to work so hard together to try to set an example for others here.
You might have a hard time getting two Democrats from the same state sitting down together like this, or two Republicans from the same state coming to sit together like this. So I think Colorado does have a very unique opportunity to lead by example. And
This White House review of national monuments, is there a national monument that you would want to get rid of?
You know, if you look, I think the review in Colorado would affect primarily Canyon of the Ancients. And I think that's the only one that meets the threshold of the executive order.
You don't want to see them actually target that to get rid of it?
No, absolutely not. Right.
Actually, you should know. I mean, the Senator Gardner voted with the Democrats on that when we had an amendment on the Senate to basically sell off the public lands of the United States.
He came over to check on me, make sure I was okay.
I came to check on him, make sure he was okay. He was okay, and the reason he was okay is that's the right vote for Colorado because we treasure our public lands. They're a huge part of our heritage, and the answer to your question is there is absolutely not a single national monument in Colorado that I think ought to be taken away.
Last thing I have is sort of a big picture question. You both ran for office to be here. You had to answer a lot of questions from guys like me and constituents and take positions on issues, and we send you here expecting that you're going to do roughly what you said you were going to. Flip side of that, we've got President Trump, very unconventional candidate, made a lot of promises, and some of the ones he said on day one he was going to do, China currency manipulator, you know, I could go down a big long list. My point is, are you concerned we're reaching a point where campaigns are going to become less relevant because people can't trust the person to do what they say they're going to on the campaign trail?
Well, campaigns are always relevant, and I think if you look at the decisions that the president has made, let's talk about things like NAFTA. I think the president had said he would withdraw from NAFTA. Yesterday he said he's not. That's a good decision. So whether he flip-flopped on it or whether he changed his mind, I'm glad that.
I'm glad he said that.
I'm glad that he's no longer going to do that. So you know,
and he's saying he still wants to review it and whatever, but
right,
yeah,
he's not going to pull out. I mean, it would be devastating
right.
for Colorado if that were to happen. So I think you have campaigns and you have candidates that change their mind, but in that particular instance and some others, I'm grateful that he has.
I do think your word means something, and the promises that you make, the commitments that you make on the campaign trail ought to amount to something. It's not that you can't change your mind. In fact, I think it's a virtue if politicians change their mind when they learn new facts that leads them to a different conclusion. But I think that we should expect more of our political leadership than we do, and I worry a lot when you've got a president who's attacking the independent judiciary, when you have a president who's attacking the free press. We've gotten to the point now where we just expect that people are going to make up their own facts, that they're going to occupy their own partisan terrain, and that's not going to put the country where it needs to go.
Senator Michael Bennet, Senator Cory Gardner, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.